And we thought last week's reading was tough, leaving our gift on the communion table and going out and being reconciled with a brother or sister. Now I got to go get slapped by somebody and turn our other cheek. I don't know about this forgiveness stuff. The second mile, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. If the rabbi were here, we'd ask him to do some biblical exegesis on that, but he's not here. But they believed in justice not being, in the Old Testament, not being more of recrimination or retaliation than what was done. And that's why they said that. And they really thought that was the idea of justice in the Old Testament. But Jesus says, if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other. If anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. I was looking for some stories that might interest us in trying to sidestep what's really being talked about here. So I found this one by a man named Josh Meisner, and he's talking about he's stranded on an airport. You know, I mean, it makes sense these days. And the plane is delayed, and they finally get on the plane, and it's announced that they're about to come into land and all that stuff that happens. And he looks at his cards, and he's got with him his young daughter and his young son. And he looks at the next leg of the journey, and they have 2 minutes from when the plane would touch down to when his next plane was going out. And he was saying that to his children, and one of the flight attendants heard him, and so she got on the plane PA and said, hey, we've got this family, and they were sitting in the last row of the plane. We've got this family, they have 2 minutes to get to their next flight. Everybody just stay seated when the plane rolls to the door. Let them get out first, they only have 2 minutes. And so the plane rolls to the door, and the whatever, take off your seatbelt sign flashes, and people start to move, and the flight attendant says up again and says, remember, we have this family that has 2 minutes to get to their next flight. Please stay in your seats. And no one did. And no one did. And so this father is so frustrated, but he says, we're the last ones off the plane, and he's so determined that they're still going to make the flight, and they have to race to this gate all the way across the airport. And I know lots of us know what that's like. And it seems that as we get older, our legs get shorter. Have you noticed that? They don't move nearly as quickly as they did when we were younger. So he's got these 2 kids, and he's dragging it, and just as they get to the gate, they close the, what's that called, the door down to the whatever. Y'all know what I'm talking about? I can't think of the word. What is it?
Jetway.
The what?
Jetway.
The jetway door, thank you. See, you can tell he's been traveling more recently. So he's just beside himself, and he sees this ticket agent, kind of still hanging out there, and he goes to him and he said, I need your help, we just missed our flight, blah, blah, blah. And the ticket agent says to him, I'm sorry, I can't help you right now, but if you go to the automated thing between gate C2 and C3, you'll be able to, to make arrangements. So this guy's calling him all sorts of names, both aloud and under his breath, and his kids are hearing him call this guy Mr. Kaka and different things like that, okay? So, but he said he gets to that little automated machine, and they get on another flight, and it's only 4 hours till the next flight, so they have time to, have lunch and relax. But it's on his mind that he was such a poor example to his children, that this was not the way that one handled the situation. And so he's kind of fuming and fretting for most of that 4 hours trying to figure out. And finally he says about 30 minutes before the next plane was to go out, he said he came to me. So I grabbed my kids' hands and I dragged them over, and there's the same, ticket guy. And he's now at this gate. You know how they do that? They just keep sashaying all over the airport and end up being the same person. And he goes over to him and he apologizes. And he said, I'm so sorry. He said, I'm sorry because I swore at you and because I said terrible things, but I'm really sorry because I did it in front of my children, and the example I gave them was this is how you handle this situation, and so I need them to hear me apologize to you. And the guy doesn't say anything for the longest time, and so this father's thinking, okay, and just before he starts to walk away, the ticket agent says, I get sworn at a lot, I get cussed at, you're the first person that ever came and apologized for what he had said and done to me. And he said, You just made my day. Somehow I think that story could be part of what Jesus would be telling if he were here today. I just think it's what was meant. What my friend in Muse, David Lewis, who's an endowed professor of preaching at one of the universities, says about this is that Jesus is creating a revolution here by calling the rules of the world into question. Calling the rules of the world into question. When we don't do an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, when we don't retaliate, when someone waves the international distress signal at us, and we wave back at them, it changes the rules of the world. Has anyone ever done that to you? And not somebody that ticked you off twice, but somebody who sincerely was trying to signal to you that they had made a, we won't say this in front of Julian, bonehead move on the road. And they were trying to apologize as they were in their car. I mean, that happened to Mary and I. It was about 11 years ago. We were on, I think it was Interstate 270, 280. It's a 10-lane highway in St. Louis. Joe, maybe you know the number. I can't remember. But we had the Miata. We had just gotten it. And y'all know how big it is. It like fits in your back pocket. So you're a major blind spot for everybody. And this 18-wheeler almost took us out. Just imagine, you would be doing this without me today. But as we went by, we knew we were a major blind spot because Mary almost backed into me in the driveway because you can't see, it's such a little car, you can't see it. And so as we went by, he just kind of went, I'm sorry, and we went, we get it. You know, what a difference it makes. Changing the rules of the road, the rules of the world, the culture that surrounds us that says an eye for an eye. Because the bottom line is, isn't that really part of the culture we live in? You know? What's stand your ground all about? I mean, you know, and that's what we want to focus on. Changing, showing love, changing the expectation so people expect things not to happen anymore, that they can let go of these negative expectations. There's so much negative energy out there. And so, you know, when someone says, go a mile, we go 2. And so I want to share this story. It was sent to me by my dissertation director. I'm telling all these St. Louis stories today. And I'm sure I'm the highlight of her career, saying, oh, there's my student who is no longer writing and reading and lecturing. She's probably still doing all those things, but, you know, she's not doing it well. So anyway, here's her story. Anybody ever hear of Lawrence Anthony? Lawrence Anthony bravely rescued wildlife and rehabilitated elephants all over the globe because of human atrocities against them. And he also was one of the ones who went in and rescued the animals in the Baghdad Zoo during the 2003 invasion of the city. On March 7, 2012, he died. 2 days after his passing, the wild elephants showed up at his home, led by 2 large matriarchs. Separate wild herds arrived in droves to say goodbye to their man friend. 31 elephants had patiently walked over 12 miles to get to his house, walking slowly for days, making their way in a solemn one-by-one line from their habitat to his house. His wife, Francois, was especially touched knowing that the elephants had not been to the house prior to that day for well over 3 years. Yet they knew where they were going. They stayed for 2 days and 2 nights without eating anything. Then one morning they left, making their long journey back home. Stories can change the culture. Stories can be revolutionary and change the rules that other people live by. We need to tell our stories. We need to pass on the stories we share here so other people get what we get. David Luce says, Jesus calls the powers of the day into question by describing an entirely different way to relate to each other, inviting us into relationships governed not by power, but by vulnerability, grounded in love. Relationships built not by power, but vulnerability, grounded in love. That's how we are going to revolutionize this world. Vulnerability, grounded in love. We have this little video that Scott's been working on all day and all night for us. Julian is probably going to be telling Rodimus what's happening because it's in Norwegian and he can't see the pictures, okay? So let's show the flick. What that whole thing said is, what do you do if you see a little boy without a jacket? Don't you have a coat? No, someone has stolen it. His teacher told him to meet her here, so the woman asked if you have her phone number.
Yeah. Vi är från Moss. Tunnvåg.
I'm not sure we even needed captions for that. What do we do when someone comes up to us on the street and says, I haven't slept in a bed for 3 nights, and it costs $10 to stay at the Y? Do you have any money you can spare? What do we do when we see the homeless by the side of the road? with their Florida tans because there is no shelter. What do we do when in this cold winter or in rainy season we know there are people sleeping outside on the ground? I know what we do. I know what we have done. I know what we are being called to do. I know what we will always be called to do. Hanging in the back is a poster on One Great Hour of Sharing. It's a UCC initiative where we share our resources. And on it it says, I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was without a jacket and you gave me yours. It is a mighty revolution we are brewing here in this tiny congregation we call Faith Family United Church of Christ. But it is a revolution that our world needs. And that we insist on being part of this day and every day. Faith Family, I am so proud to be your pastor. I can't even tell.